Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John Dentico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is John Chappelear, a globally recognized expert in life balance, leadership, and communication, known for helping individuals and organizations create permanent positive change from the inside out. He is the award-winning author of The Daily Six, a transformational book that earned the Best Book Award from USA Book News and continues to impact leaders and readers around the world. With over 100 published articles on organizational culture and emotional well-being, John brings deep insight into the human side of leadership. His second book, People Come First, Leadership for the New Millennium, further emphasizes his commitment to empathetic, values-driven leadership in a world that craves connection and purpose. Currently working on the 20th anniversary edition of The Daily Six, John remains at the forefront of conversations around self-awareness, emotional balance, and sustainable success. His work challenges traditional leadership paradigms, replacing stress and division with peace, balance, and authentic connection. John lives with his family in Jacksonville, Florida, and shares his message through speaking engagements, consulting, and his popular newsletter, The Positive Thought of the Week. And I am truly pleased that he is here with me today. Good morning, John. How are you?
Dr. John, it's nice to be here. I'm very grateful for you asking me to be on the show.
Oh, great to have you here. Just call me John, please.
Okay.
I appreciate it. We're good to go. So, John, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? And what are some of the influences of your early life?
Well, let's see. I grew up in Washington, D.C., which is great to say. Most people go, was your father in politics? Like, no, actually, D.C. has a whole city that lives underneath the federal government. If you live in D.C., you'll get as frustrated as most of the people who live in D.C. because the federal government still has most of the control over the District of Columbia. So if they don't approve the budget or they don't like what's going on, they just change it. It's a little hard to do much in the way of self-rule, but it's come a long way. When I was a kid, district residents couldn't even vote for president. So they got a non-voting member of Congress now. That's a big sweep in 70 years. The people who influenced me the most growing up was probably, and I tell this story a lot, but I think my father was probably the most influential leader. What I learned was how not to lead. My father was a self-taught salesman, and didn't have any real education. And so he did what a lot of salespeople do and a lot of people that I work with, which is sort of this entrepreneurial spirit, which once they become entrepreneurial and have a business and work for themselves, have no idea what to do other than sell more stuff. And so that was my father's, as long as we're growing, we're doing fine, revenue, balance of debt, that's not a problem. We'll just sell our way out of the problem. After he spent a tremendous amount of money on my education, I thought it was kind of silly to spend the rest of my career working in a 3,000 square foot retail store. So I started reading things that were important to me. Tom Peters' book, In Search of Excellence, Covey's book, 7 Habits, those kinds of things began to get me to see what real leadership was about. Peters was really good for helping me identify the value of an emotional connection in creating real engagement rather than a mission state, which is wonderful, but doesn't create any emotional connection. The only difference between a couple and an engaged couple is emotion. Otherwise, they're just two people. If you want engagement, you have to be willing as a leader. And we were talking about this before the show started, about trust. I mean, trust cannot be created without a sense of emotional connection to the people, places, and situations that you work in. It's very uncomfortable for leaders who have come out of an MBA program. I mean, you come from an educational background. It's not something warm and fuzzy 101 is not a class. Emotional connection is not a class. Building trust. I've got programs that I've designed for hospitals in the Middle East. The idea was how to teach physicians who get promoted to chairman of department how to be a chairman of a department, because they know exactly how to be a surgeon. But a surgeon runs a surgical unit as a dictator. Give me this, goodbye. You can't do that when you're sitting around a table with 10 colleagues. You can't do the same kind of leadership. And they've never had any training like that. That's one example of how you learn leadership. But a professor of chemistry who gets promoted to the department head of a chemistry department is really kind of like, well, now what do I do? How do I build consensus? It doesn't make any sense. What I have found across the board, for-profit, not-profit, government-based, everything else, if you want an organization to become a community, which to me is a commonality of focus. A community is simply a commonality of focus. And if you want a commonality of focus, that has to be driven not by intellect, but by emotion. And the two have to be going arm in arm. I told you earlier, I was writing a piece about fear of change, especially in the time of AI. I wrote down a case study of being in a workshop and asking people, how many people in here have ever had a new operating manual, program, mission statement, whatever it is, dropped on you from above with no notice and no idea how to implement? Guess how many hands went up? Every single hand goes up in every single room, from South Africa to Oregon to Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's a universal lack of the willingness to be emotionally engaged. And that might be the wrong word. It might not be willingness to be engaged. If you don't know, then you don't know. If you've never tried it, it makes you feel very vulnerable right away. If you're honest about how you're feeling and what your expectations are, it can't just be 20% more. It's got to be a better connection. It's got to be a feeling that you get when you walk into an organization. Most times they don't. It was the early on people who taught me about early on leadership. I mean, Earl Nightingale and those kind of guys way back when. And Nightingale still gets quoted a lot, but they forget the second part of it. You can achieve anything you want, was Nightingale's phrase, as long as you understand what you have to give up to get to it. And some of us, I lost a wife, relationship with children, all this other stuff, because I was willing to give everything up for success. And when I turned around, these chess pieces that I thought were behind me, which was actually my family, and they keep moving around whether I move them or not, they're gone. Wife is like, I can't do this anymore. I'm taking the kids. You can see them whenever you want, but I'm not going to be waiting around here any longer. Leadership has to realize that we are really not doing it for, I'm not doing this for you. I'm not doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my ego. When we can begin to realize the level that our ego controls it, all of a sudden, relationships get easier, family gets easier, relationships at work get easier. But it really does take a diametrically opposed position intellectually of what you've been taught, and the willingness. That's why in the Daily Fix, willingness is number one. Be willing to try new things, to find a new teacher to teach you new lessons. And so it was the early authors that taught me about emotional connection with leadership.
I agree. I think we're now in the throes with the aftermath of COVID, where people are no longer searching for just a paycheck, where people are looking for values alignment. One of the big things I've researched is that this is a multi-generational workforce. This is a big deal, values alignment. We're in this, and of course, the incredible influx of artificial intelligence. Organizations, in my opinion, have to move from a fear-based model, which was the basis for bureaucracy. The bureaucratic model was built on fear. That's where Max Weber got his ideas from Frederick the Great of Prussia. reintroducing organization onto the battlefields. The enlisted feared the sergeants feared the officers, this whole fear-based model to a trust-based model ain't easy, because if we're going to take advantage of the skills, the knowledge, the abilities of the people in the room, then we need to build the undercurrent. The basis has to be trust, because we have to bring people together and look for the good ideas, which many times you don't know where they're going to come from. You don't know where a great idea is going to come from. So you've got to foster this idea. The leadership model I started developing 30 years ago, and I talk about this all the time. I'm sure my listeners are going, no, he's not going to talk about that again. But the premise, the single premise is contribution. Okay, we have an issue, we have a problem. Anybody here got an idea? Anybody want to help us get down the road? I absolutely agree with you. I think trust is so very important. And I want to reflect back on something when you talked about mission statements. I got to go down that road. And that is, you're right. Most mission statements, I'm sure you've seen them, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs long. We want to make sure everybody loves us. We're writing this for the people outside the organization. So, here's who we are. Aren't we great? Love us. And what they forget many times is they're really writing that for the people inside the organization. It has to be one sentence. And one simple sentence that everybody goes, it's the galvanizing spirit. If you do it right, the example I use, and of course, this is not a mission statement, but a slogan, is from the movie 300 with Gerard Butler. This is Sparta. Does anybody not know who we are? Does anybody not know what we do? Okay, good. Everybody, does anybody want to go to HR and talk about this? Everybody knows who we are. That's right. This is what we do. So you can have emotional connection, something like a slogan like that. Certainly a mission statement hopefully will support that. But to me, I think that we have to focus in on those things so people say, I'm aligned with you. I want to be with you. I want to work with you, because you really, we are connected at some level.
I was just going to say, it's the old phrase of people join companies and quit because of leadership. And it's been true. I remember when I was a kid going to the office with my father, and, I would listen to this. He was a salesman. He was a leading salesman, but he had sales managers and VPs of sales and the president of the company. Even though they sat in early 50s versions of cubicles with the tinted glass on the top, anytime Marsh got up, he was the president of the company, he got up, started walking back through the sales desk. I mean, it was like,
right,
kind of thing. That's fair. Okay, fair. They would do things like, my father, I said, how come you keep all these papers in your pocket? He said, because if I leave one of these, you remember the little while you're out note? Sally called, wants to open a new account. If I went to the restroom, came back, that would be missing from my desk. One of the other salespeople would have taken it.
Interesting.
They would have called and gotten the account, and I wouldn't. Now, talk about a level of trust. That's not only a level of distrust, and that's a whole nother category. It's like engagement, but there's also disengagement. And then there's active disengagement, where the people are actually working to the detriment of your organization. Not only do you need the trust, you need to not foster distrust.
I work for an organization exactly like that, where the vice presidents, because their bonuses were ranked on how much profit, how much business they did. If the organization on the East Coast found an opportunity for us on the West Coast, because it was separated geographically, and their name shall remain nameless, you know what I mean? But they would throw it in the garbage.
Fair.
The vice president would throw it in the garbage because he was competing against the other person on the West Coast for who was going to be the top dog that year.
Right.
And to me, it was like, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And the only way that we'd work it out sometimes is because people on the lower levels became friends and they would help each other. They would say, hey, we heard about this and this is coming. Yeah. These guys.
It's changed the way the bonuses pay extra for bringing an account from another territory into your territory. When I had a company in Washington, I had about 50 outside sales reps. All 50 of them would go to one guy's territory and work that whole day, passing out business cards, talking if needed, and all the leads went to that sales rep. And then the next month, it would go to a different sales rep. It took a whole year to go through the whole 50 guys. And they had never heard of anything like that before, and neither had I. I was just like, why don't we figure out a way to do this together? If 50 people knocking on doors is a whole lot better than one, let's go find them. This is sales. This is just simply blocking and tackling. Let's get out there and do this. It's a common product. Everybody buys it. So let's go find the right people. This is one of those things where my father was very helpful in teaching me what not to do. The concept of cooperation. He was sort of a minimum wage guy. And if you wanted more money, go find another job kind of thing. And he never entered into the concepts of cost of training or opportunity costs. It just never entered into his head. When the owner of the company's out selling $100 worth of paper clips, it's really not an effective way to utilize your skill set. The trust thing you were talking about earlier is even harder now, because it was one thing when it was me trusting you. You and I can sort of learn how to trust each other. I can look at you, I can see you, I can understand your genuine position, whether you sound trustworthy. But I can't tell that when I'm tapping into ChatGPT. I still get weirded out sometimes when it says, this is what I thought you might think it was important. Do you want me to add an introduction to this? So I just usually go, no, thanks. I'll just take it from here and take what I wrote, take what they wrote, mix it together into Grammarly and see what I end up with. People are cranking out 3 or 4 books a week with just AI. And I read it, it sounds like I'm reading from a robot and not from a human. If we're going to be changing to more AI, we have to work even harder on eliminating the fear in a human environment. That means the people who don't understand leadership and don't know how to build trust or engagement are going to be even more hamstrung when AI comes in, because it's coming in everywhere. This is a Xerox machine on steroids. Computers into the computer. I remember when computers first came into the businesses, and it was like, oh my God, how do we do this? I didn't even realize you could do that. People in the bookkeeping department, these big ledger books, they're going, does this mean I don't have a job anymore? It's like, no, we're just going to teach you how to run the computer, and you can add all the entries and the expenses in that. But most times leadership doesn't explain enough to the people who actually do the work to make them feel comfortable. And that's the whole basis for me.
Yeah, I think the whole modality has been survival of the fittest in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
I think that's got to go by the wayside. It's got to go by the wayside because of the multidimensional companies and organizations today that are coming into existence. You're going to need everybody who's working with you. And yes, I agree. AI is an incredible tool, incredibly powerful. And I don't have any problem per se of a person writing a book with AI, provided in the beginning of the book, they say, this book was written with the help of AI. This is an ethical approach. This is what I did. This is what AI did. It helped me create the right syntax and explore different areas. I think there should be a page in the front of the book that explains it. And I think people will be accepting of that. I think people will look at that and go, wow, that was really clever. Interesting how he was able to put the human side into it at the same time. He used ChatGPT or another AI system to clarify certain ideas or create pathways. Let me ask you this question, John. You've written over 100 articles on organizational culture and emotional balance. What patterns have you seen in workplaces that struggle with connection, and how can leadership turn that around?
How much time do we have here? Well, let's just try to stay within the U.S. I mean, because I did 10 years working in the Middle East. You want to talk about a lack of visible emotional connection. It was so funny. I would sit in a room full of men, because the women were, of course, in a different room on a video camera. But I would sit in a room of men and try to get them to smile, just smile. And we got to a point where everybody was laughing so hard they didn't know what to do. And I said, why don't you feel like this every day at work? He said, because nobody else does. Nobody acts like this at work. And the women were smarter, quicker, faster, and better than the men on every level, except their willingness to contribute. They were unwilling to contribute because their position was stuck so far down that they felt like their contribution would not be appreciated. And the Eastern culture, China, Japan, those kinds of things are not dramatically different. In the US, the issue is the same as it's always been. The problem is, do you have the capacity to do this? I see so many people signing up for executive MBAs, but I don't see anybody signing up for executive MBAs in emotional intelligence. How do you do that? That's one of the things about my book, The Daily Six, is it's just 6 little ideas that you can put in your head every day and work on one of them. How to be more loving, how to be more grateful, how to take action on some of the great intentions we have. We have great intentions. How many times do we intend to quit smoking, and by 3 o'clock, we've got a cigarette in our hands? Because it's conditioned response. And if your conditioned response is, geez, boss, I got a problem, I don't know what to do. And the answer is, if you don't get your ass back to the desk, you're fired. You've got to be willing in any kind of a transition. You're a professor. The success curve is, here's a great idea. Oh boy, everybody's excited about it. This is amazing. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work quite as well and things start to get discouraged again and it goes down. But then if you keep at it, it starts getting better again. It goes up and up. But you've got to stay through the trough where it goes, the initial excitement of it goes up and then it goes down. And you got to get through that trough to get to the success side. And everybody quits at the bottom. So how are you going to have a guy who reminds you of a used car salesman? No offense to used car salesmen. Some of my best friends are used car salesmen. Who looks like that in the office? Big smile, plaid jacket. Hey guys, we're all here to get working together, except I don't do anything to help you other than say we're working together, then get him to become Mr. Rogers. There's a transition that goes from focusing on my success to focusing on our success. It takes time. And that's one of the things a number of friends of mine have stopped doing as much workshops as I used to do and have started doing more one-on-one coaching, in that it's much easier to take a program and drive it deeply into the heads of leadership and have them call you and say, I tried this today. I felt like an idiot. It's like, that's okay. That means you're on the right track. The old behavior would feel very comfortable. This is new behavior. It's going to be uncomfortable. Okay, I'll tell you tomorrow what happened. Unless there's somebody there to continually say, just keep going. It'll work. Get you out of that trough. They're back up to where it's successful again. Unless you have that, either because you're amazingly successful at self-talk, or you've got a friend or a wife who is willing to listen to the struggles. It's really hard because, like you said, I mean, we've done, because we've done, success of the fittest, strongest has been the thing. But in Darwin's study, it was actually not survival of the fittest. It was survival of the most adaptive. That was his reality. So if we were going to be survival of the most adaptive, we would be willing and excited about this change of AI. We would be the willows blowing in the winds, not the oak trees standing here getting ready to get knocked over. We're going to get knocked over if we don't blow with the wind. If we're not willing to be adaptive. In the article I'm writing right now, I talked about the Luddite revolution. I don't know if you remember that. That's like 1700s, when things like knitting machines and weaving machines finally began to produce materials. All these workers thought they were all going to be out of work. Oh my God, this machine cranks out 20 yards of material a day and I can only do 3. What happened is they built more machines and put more people back to work, and everything became more productive. Because nothing helps a society better than a well and educated and well-employed populace. If everybody's wandering around uneducated and unhappy, that's not a good model for an organization or an economy or a city or a state could grow. It's, you need people thinking that this is the path forward and I've got the right people above me to help me move forward successfully.
I like to quote Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA. And he said, you don't have to worry about AI taking your job. You have to worry about someone who understands and is prolific with AI to take your job. And I think that it goes right to the point of adaptation. The ability to say, I can move into that rather than being fearful. I think that's right on the money. People are going to have to face it. They're going to have to deal with it. But here's the thing too, that I think is on the positive side of the balance sheet, John. Today, more than ever, we have resources spread across the planet, online learning systems, coaching using Zoom or something like that.
Yes.
All these resources that are, some are expensive, but some are very cost effective, that people can turn to and use to get up on step for the new trends and wages coming along. AI is here to stay. There's just no doubt about it. How we choose to use it, where we use it, what we do with it, and how it helps us. It helps me, for example, build ideas and build pathways.
Right.
I may not go down that path. And yes, it does hallucinate at this point. It has hallucinations, but you've got to take the good with the bad, so to speak. So I'm very aware of that. And I think you're right. I think people are adaptive if they give themselves a break. If they just say, hey, listen, I got to take a step back here. What do I have to do to get to the next spot? I think one of the benefits too is not necessarily a full-time college, but community colleges are built on this idea of, hey, you need to change skills. We can get you up to speed. Yesterday, I had a wonderful guest, Dan Fricker, who's been involved in HR for a long time. He made this comment, and I really think he's right on the money with this. We had another conversation about AI and the implications, and that is, he said, it hasn't been figured out yet in the HR world, especially in the staffing world. We were talking about the staffing world. He said, but it's going to get figured out. And I said, well, what is that, Dan?
Sure.
He said, what's going to become important are things like certifications. So in other words, you can go off and take an online course and get a certification. I did that. I got a certification as an artificial intelligence management professional, really looking at the ethical side of the implication of AI. So that was very, very helpful for me. But you can go off and get these little credentials. So when you show up in a place, even if you're just in a temporary fractional position, you can say,
Right.
here's the certifications that I have. I think I would fit in well. And people will grab onto that. So that's going to be interesting to see.
I agree with that. That's kind of like wearing a shirt and tie. If you didn't show up with a shirt and tie on, you weren't qualified to work here. And if you don't show up with a series of letters behind your name, I had so many series behind my name, I just end up with John Chappelear now because it's ridiculous. But you're right. If you don't have those skills, why would I want to hire you? If you don't have the willingness or desire to learn new ideas, that's why willingness is right there at the front. You have to be willing to learn new things. You can't start working at 20. I have a 40-year-old master's degree. How valuable is it? It's like nothing. I use nothing that I learned in almost any school with the exception of history. But like the Prussian War you mentioned earlier, the things that are valuable today are today's dynamics. What's going on today that is changing things? And I'm trying to figure out how to use AI more effectively, how to build courses that people can utilize. When he taught that 40 years ago at the University of Chicago, it wasn't a part of the course load. This is that lifelong learner thing we used to talk about a lot, but everybody's so, I already know pretty much everything I need to know. It's like, no, you don't. AI is one of those wake-up calls that's so profound. It says all the time, I've been telling you, you're supposed to be a lifelong learner. The only thing a master's degree did for me was learn how to learn. Now I know how to learn, so I can take a course, find out when I start, I would have my expectations. And when I get out of the other end of it, I know if I've realized those expectations, I can measure it against where I'd like to be. I find myself taking courses if somebody says, can you come over and talk to us? I never had done any work specifically with hospitals before until about 20 years ago. And this was in Saudi Arabia. Can you talk to us about the stress loads on nurses in high traffic hospitals? They have 11,000 employees. And I said, sure, I can do that. And then I hung up the phone going, how the heck am I going to do that? So the first thing I did was get online and learn about the troubles. It took me probably 2 months to do enough study to understand what was going on in that region with the way those hospitals are staffed. They're government owned like everything else. What's the process? What's the issue associated with the stress? How can we change it? I didn't know any of those things. But by the time I got to Saudi, about 6 months later, I was very well informed. I wouldn't say an expert, but I was very well informed on the challenges and issues. Then I spent the next couple of days saying, what are your challenges and issues? And we built the whole course as it went forward with what I had learned, plus what they're experiencing. And then at the end of the course, what I always say is, here were the 12 things you said you were having trouble with. Which one of these can we check off, or can we check them all off? And we would, if we weren't checking them all off, go back and hit the points one or two before, because there's no sense in having something if nobody gets anything from it. And that's the thing, like you were saying, it's exactly right. There is so much material online, obscure or out left field, but it's there. There's probably 8 videos on it right now on how to do something. So it's just a willingness to say, look, I've already put my 20 years in and I'm playing golf 3 times a week. I'll be retired in 15 years. Like, well, that's great. If I was your boss and I heard you saying you're going to retire in 15 years, I'd be a little concerned about your level of productivity. Why are you not continuing to desire to learn and grow? Once you quit doing that, you've sort of plateaued. Intellectually, you're just kind of floating through life, waiting for things to happen to you rather than trying to make things happen.
Right. I agree. To go back to your point, we talked about the credentials, and I think that's important. But there's a couple of other things that are important as well. What are the values of this individual? Do the values of this
Yeah.
individual match that with the organization, and vice versa?
Right.
Here comes a person walking up to the front door, and so to speak, is this the organization I want to be part of? Is it, are we in sync? So I think that's really important. And the other thing that I've been talking about lately, especially with some of the wonderful people that I've had on the podcast, is, hire for heart. And what I mean by that is people who have endured difficult, complex issues. I've had some amazing guests tell you, stories about their upbringing that are just horrific. Yet never once in all the guests that I've had did I ever hear them even utter or whisper the word, I was a victim. They just pushed through it. They got to the other side. They figured out what they had to do, and they rose to the challenge. I think that's important now because they're adaptable. They're adaptable. They know how to get things done. They know how to deal with difficult times. And in the end, they know how to push through it and have great perseverance. And to me, that's really key. So just a reflection on that. John, we're getting close to the end here. So I'd like to ask you my world famous question I've asked people all over the world. And that is, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing in the world of work that you see, what would that issue be and why did you choose that?
Let's see. I think I would try to work to become, well, I don't know if I want to be a professor or not, no offense, but I would like to find a way to ingrain the values of emotion. Like you said, hire from heart. How do you teach people to value that? How do you teach people to value the concept of love or forgiveness or gratitude or service to others versus, me, not so much what can I get, which is always what I was worried about, but what can I put into this relationship, whether it be my wife or my sales manager? What am I putting into that relationship rather than what am I getting out of it? And if you come out with that perspective, the capacity for you to build an organization or a family or a church or whatever you want to build, the capacity to build that successfully goes up exponentially. So that's what I would want to do. I'd want to spread emotional intelligence a lot sooner than it got spread.
I agree. Authenticity, vulnerability, the ability to say, I made a mistake. Let's figure out how we can get there from here is really important. And I have a correction for you, John. I've taught in colleges and universities, but I don't consider myself to be the professorial type. I'm a trainer at heart. My goal is to take the theoretical ideas and turn them into practices and processes so that people can take that stuff and go out the next day and do something with it, because that's the problem. We put so much work into what I refer to as a misnomer, which is leadership development. I see it as leader development. We develop the leader, but the question is, can they take the knowledge and information and go out and do something with it? Positive, create a collaborative environment, create a place where people come to do their best work every single day. That takes effort. And it takes a conversion factor. You've seen it. People have the job, the title, and they've been through all the training. Can you do leadership? Not really. You create more of a disjointed approach where people don't buy in. They don't buy in because they don't feel they're getting what they need, either from an emotional intelligence perspective or from the ability to be truly involved in the decision-making processes of the organization. So
I agree 100%.
Listen, John, thank you so very much for your time today on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I can't thank you enough. A stirring conversation, I must say, and I appreciate it. Rousing conversation.
There we go.
So thank you so much, John. You have a wonderful future. I wish you and your family the best in everything that comes to you.
Thank you, John. I'm very grateful.